What's going on, producers and songwriters? In this video, I'm going to show you a passing chord that is so easy to use, but not only is it easy, it's going to instantly level up the quality of your chord progressions without having to wreck your brain over the theory. If you don't know me, my name is BruceBeats. I've worked with industry artists and producers such as Major 7, Russ, Rapsody, and more. I have TV placements all over Netflix, Hulu, ESPN, Fox Sports, BET, Bravo, McDonald's as a music producer. And right here with this channel, I want to show you all the secrets so that you can be a baller musician and producer. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to break this lesson down for you in two parts. Part one, we're going to talk about the chord itself so you can get familiar with the actual chord and the shape so you're not confused by that. And then number two, how to use it in the music you're actually making. And maybe we could take a look at some examples of how other people use it as well so you can hear it and see it in context. So when we're talking about the diminished chord, there are really only 3 diminished chords. I know you may be like, dude, what are you talking about? There's 12 different keys. Shouldn't there be 12 different diminished chords, much like there's 12 different, major chords and things like that? Yes, kinda, but not really. The diminished chord is a very symmetrical chord. Now, I may use some fancy words. Don't let the fancy words confuse you. You literally have everything lit up here. You have me playing here, and you have the chords lighting up as I'm explaining things. And this is a YouTube video, so you can pause it, rewind it, slow it down, do whatever you need to. Don't let the fancy words confuse you. So now that we have that out of the way, the diminished chord is actually very simple. You can start on any note, and you go up by 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3. Do it again. 1, 2, 3. Do it again. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Now we have a 4-note chord, and we notice it says C diminished 7. So this is going to be a diminished chord, and you notice it sounds kind of dark, right? Really cool. So we're not going to use this chord by itself like that. We're going to use it as a passing chord to get us somewhere really smoothly, but we'll get to that in part 2. So we have this shape. Now, if we kept going up using 3 semitones, which is called a minor third, if we go 1, 2, 3, notice we end up with C again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We just start building the same shape all over again. Just the way that the math works, this same shape, no matter where you build it from any single one of these notes, it's all going to be that same thing. So C diminished is the same notes as E flat diminished, is the same notes as F sharp diminished, is the same notes as A diminished, and then that cycle just keeps repeating itself. So when you could just start to see this as one shape, as 4 notes that belong together, that form this diminished shape, you can just plug it in anywhere you want, and then you go to your resolution chord, which again, we'll be talking about in just a second. So that's diminished chord number 1. Now, if we go up a half step to C sharp, and then we follow that same process, up 3 semitones, up a minor third, up another minor third, boom. We have C sharp diminished 7. And again, we want to see this as one shape, right? These 4 notes belong together. And a really easy way to do that is actually just to go up and down the piano and just play them like this. That way you start to see them all as belonging together, right? Ooh, sounds cool. Sounds so cool. And last but not least, we do have one more, and that is D diminished. And last but not least, we do have D diminished, or F diminished, or A flat diminished, or B diminished, again, because it could be any one of those 4, but we're going to go ahead and start it with D. So D, up a minor third, up a minor third, up a minor third. And we have this. Sounds awesome, right? So again, bringing it up and down the piano, kind of in this way, so we can see it all. We can start to see this as one shape. Those are going to be your diminished chords, literally in all 12 keys. So once you just get used to playing what I just did, if we can just do this. And then do it here. And then do it here. you have now played literally all the diminished chords you could ever play on the piano in this closed voicing. But you know, you can move the voicings once you really understand the notes, and that's what this gets you to do. It doesn't matter where you're going to use it now. You have it in your brain, you have it under your fingers, and so it's not going to trip you up when you want to use it. So let's move on to part 2. So for part 2, we're going to break this up into 2 subsections. Number 1, I'm going to show you the best places to use this diminished passing chord in major keys. So when you're making instrumentals, when you're making tracks, when you're writing songs, when you're making beats, whatever it may be, and you're figuring out your chord progression and it's in a major key, this is where you're gonna wanna use that diminished chord. These are gonna be the most common places to use it. And then we're gonna move on to if you're making a track but it's in minor, and the most common places to use it in a minor key. So the best places to use a diminished passing chord in major are going to the 2 chord, going to the 4 chord, and going to the 6 chord. Now if you don't know what I mean by that, totally cool. I'm going to explain it to you right now. Let's say you have a scale. So we're in C major, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I highly encourage you to think about music in numbers because it makes everything so much easier. So whenever you watch any of my videos or you're speaking to me or you're on one of my coaching calls in my private program, I'm going to be speaking to you in numbers. If you're not used to it, it may be a little weird at first, but down the line, it makes things infinitely easier. So if we take C major, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So C, D, E, F, G, A, B becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now what we can do on every single one of these notes is we can build a chord by simply going play 1, skip 1, play 1, skip 1, play 1. And if we do that from the first note, the 1, we get the 1 chord. If we do it from the second note, we get the 2 chord. If we do that from the third note, we get the 3 chord. And so you can do this all the way up the piano, and that's going to give you your chords for that scale. And so the 2 chord is going to be D minor. The 4 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, is going to be F major. And the 6 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, is going to be A minor. Now, how do we get into that using a diminished chord? Very easy. Basically, wherever we want to go, we're going to find a root note to that chord. So it's literally just what it says. So if we're going to D minor, the root note is D, okay? And we go down 1/2 step, so we have D flat or C sharp, and we make our diminished chord. So now we have C sharp diminished going into D. See how lovely that sounds? And by the way, circle is shorthand for diminished. Whenever you see a circle symbol, that means it's a diminished chord. So if I'm playing C, that one sounds kind of jazzy, right? So that's a really cool way, instead of just going from C major to D, which can work, right? But you can kind of add some extra movement by doing that. Now, let's hear how it sounds going to the 4 chord, going to the F. So if we have F, if we just play it as a triad, or we can put some nice colors on it, right? Same thing. So I'll find my root note, which is F. I'll go down 1/2 step, which I literally just moved the bass note down 1/2 step, and from there, I make my diminished chord, so E diminished. You see why we did part 1 first? So that you can have these shapes under your fingers, you don't necessarily have to think about them. So we have E diminished, going to F. So we have that same example. Say if we go to F, right? Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but you see how that has a really cool vibe to it? And actually, in this same key, Leave the Door Open, Silk Sonic does this very thing. So I believe it's when you feel where you at, right? So it does this exact thing going into that 4 chord. They just, you know, if you have the 4 chord, you go down 1/2 step, hit it diminished, and it brings you very nicely into that. And it's cool because you kind of leave the key for a second. If you notice these notes of the diminished chord, these black keys, there are no black keys in the key of C. So whenever you kind of leave the key, you go on a quick detour real quick, that's why it sounds so cool. And thinking about it this way allows you to do it without wrecking your brain onto what key am I going to, and it's a borrowed chord and I'm coming back. Just think about it like this. And if you want to get into all that stuff later, we can absolutely do that. But to use it and to sound good and have fun and write with it, just think about it like this. Last but not least, let's go into the sixth chord. So the sixth chord, like we mentioned, if we start with C, count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is A minor. And we're gonna follow the same process. So I have my A minor. I'll go down, take my root note down by 1/2 step, and then I make my G sharp diminished chord. And it brings me so wonderfully. It doesn't even matter if I change the voicing. It works almost any which way you do it because it's just the way music works. So let's change up the example this time. I'm not gonna start on C. Let's say I'm starting on F. And let's do a very common progression. So we would have F, G, A minor. Even no, just keeping it triads. This is super common. I'm sure you've heard this a million times, right? Nothing crazy about this. But what if on the last time I hit that G sharp diminished? So I say, see what I mean? Or I can hang on it a little longer. You know, I'm gonna say, and then hit him with the hit him with a nice major chord or something like that. Do you see how when I threw in that G sharp diminished, it just added something extra? It added this tension, it added this life that wasn't present when I was just playing, when I was just sticking into the key of C, right? And there's nothing wrong with this. This is beautiful. There's a million songs that have been made with this. But when you say, that brings a little something to it. So if you do that on the second half of your hook, or if you do it in beautiful moments in the song and you pick the perfect place to inject this type of emotion, it immediately levels up the quality of your production. Because if you notice here, I'm just playing piano, and as soon as I hit that chord, it immediately brought some life into the playing. So imagine how it's gonna be in your production when you have all the nice elements, when you have the guitars and the strings and the synths and the bass or the 808, the background vocals, also playing this beautiful chord as you're doing the thing. Oh, it's gonna sound wonderful. Now let's move on to the passing chords in minor. So here we'll take C minor as the example. Instead of thinking about it like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But here we have a little bit of a different thing because we have 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. And if you don't know what I mean by that, remember how in major all of these notes are white? So the third, the 6th, and the 7th note, we are going to flat these. And we're going to play E flat, A flat, and B flat. And that gives us the sound of minor. So we have 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. And that gives you the sound. And it's that same formula for any scale, by the way, which you see how it makes it so easy? If I'm in any scale, I could just think 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7, and I'm good. So if I'm going to C minor, I'm going to follow the same exact thing that I did before. I'm going to find my root, so C minor. I'm going to go down a half step, play a diminished chord. Boom. And this is gonna bring me right there. So let's take a very, very common progression in minor, which would be like 4, 5, 1. Lovely. So what I could do is before I get to this C, much like I was doing before, I could throw in that B diminished. And it gives me a really nice vibe, very similar to the one we did just a second ago. So that's B diminished going into C minor. Now let's look at it going to the 4. Again, it's gonna be the same exact thing. So if I go 1, 2, flat 3, 4, I have F minor. Let me take my root, go down a half step, E diminished. See how wonderful and beautiful that sounds? So let's take that same progression that we were doing before, but let's travel back to the F using the E diminished chord. So we could say, "Ooh, that sounded wonderful." Let's hear that one more time. Let's do a slow-mo. So now that I'm looking at this, flat 6 was actually a brain fart. You don't really go to the flat 6 with a diminished chord. Although this is actually a perfect example, and I'm glad this happened, because sometimes you break the rules of what's common. Rules, right? Of what's common. And sometimes you just try things out and you see if they work. And this, I think it's gonna work pretty well, actually. So actually what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna tell you how I would usually get into this A flat, and then let's see if the diminished chord will get us there as well. In the key of C minor, we notice the A flat is a flat 6. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6. Wonderful. One of the things we can do that's actually really nice is if we go down to the 5 and we make the 5 a dominant chord with a flat 9 on it, this usually will want to bring us back to C. If you just hear this, like, you see how that just sounds very natural to do? But if we take this chord and we come to A flat, ooh, it sounds beautiful. And so we have G7 flat 9, which, by the way that I like to play this is using a diminished chord. So if you notice, this says B diminished 7. So I'll just put B diminished 7 over G. And then that'll give me that chord. This is part of the grip system that I teach my students. It's absolutely amazing. I actually have a free masterclass on it down in the description below if you wanna learn about it, because it makes things so much easier. But check this out. Ooh! And even if we go down with the voice leading, even if we add, like, you know, a sharp 11 or something, it doesn't really matter what you do because that just works so well. Let's see if we can get a true diminished chord to sound just as cool. So we'll have a G diminished here. Let's see if that brings us really nicely to A flat. So can work. You see how that felt a little different though? You know, so as we're going through these, you're probably thinking, oh, I've heard that sound before. But with this one, not necessarily. But it sounds really cool. I like it a lot, actually. So there you have it. As a quick recap, remember there are only 3 diminished chords, and you can practice them up and down the piano in the exact way that I was doing here in this video, and that's gonna get it locked in your fingers, but also locked in your brain in seeing these 4-note shapes as just one thing. The way I like to think about it is, for example, if you think of the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, you have Miami, you have Orlando, you have Tallahassee, and you have St. Augustine. But when you think about the state of Florida, you know those 4 cities are in there, but you just think Florida. And so this is the way I like to think about and approach all chords. So when I think C diminished, I know that these 4 individual notes are there, but my mind just sees them as one grouping, one shape. And so doing it in this way really trains your brain to think about it like that. That way, when we go on to actually using them, we could just use them and not have to think about what the chord is, and then that interrupts your flow of creativity. You can just plug and play, and you're good because you got it here and you got it here. And when we're doing these in major, the best places to take them is to that minor 2 chord, that major 4 chord, and that minor 6 chord. And when we're doing these in minor, best place to take it is the 1 chord and the 4 chord. And what we discovered is we can even get to the flat 6 chord. By the way, you can literally do this moving up in half steps to any chord you want. So if we were in major, right? Half step, into it. Half step, into it. Or half step would be the same chord. Half step, into it. Half step, into it. Half step, into it. Half step, into it. So I know that's a little bit advanced, but because the rule and the trick is you have your target chord, C minor, and then right before it, you go a half step down and you play that as a diminished, bringing you into the target chord. Because of that, you can literally just throw it wherever you want, but these are the most common places that you're gonna find it. I hope this video has been valuable to you. If you want some more training on how to play piano like this really easily, specifically for production, getting your tracks mixed and mastered, structured and arranged to an industry standard quality, and actually getting paid for your music via sync licensing, I have a free training and a bunch of free materials down here in the description that'll show you exactly how to do so. Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. My name is BruceBeats. See you on the next video.